over lean portfolio management, I feel graced even with a small crowd. It could be a crowd of 2, and I'd be happy as long as there's people here willing to learn. And I do want to say that Richard Nastor is one of the SAFE fellows who's helped put together a lot of the lean portfolio management material. So he's going to keep me honest if I say anything that is totally off the wall or a little bit in the gray area. So I do have a lot of personal experience with LPM and traditional portfolio management, project portfolio management back in the day when I was using Primavera and other tools like that with big companies like BP. So I'll give a couple of stories. This is a lot of material. If we get it done in an hour, I'd be surprised. I'll try to keep it down to an hour. If we go a little bit over, I know that this runs to 7:30. I'll definitely make sure that we stop with enough time for some QA at the end. And would like to say also that questions are always encouraged, and this is going to be interactive. I keep it simple. There's only 2 tools we use, and one of them we use at the beginning, and that's Mentimeter. And of course, Travis and Sandra, you know about that tool. And the other one is a tool you both know as well, and that is Jamboard. So for those of you who might not be familiar with the tools, very easy to do online. And so happy to be here. Let me talk a little bit more about myself. I do have a company called Lean Agile Enterprises. I'm also working for a bigger company right now called CGI, and they're a Canadian-based company that has been around for 45 years. I've been finding out that they've got a lot of great history and experience. I've also have a lot of history and experience, meaning that I've done almost every role that you can imagine in IT, right? I've practiced, I've done the support side, I've done the calls and weekends, and at 5 p.m. every Friday, it seemed like I'd get some sort of production down system back when I was doing that. Being a support manager, QA manager, in the QA, done a little bit of QA automation. Very bad product owner. I was one of those product owner dictators that you don't ever want to be. I've even done some UX very poorly and realized that I'd rather have other people do it. Programming is where I started. I was a developer, and I've done a lot of project management. That's where I've had my most enjoyment and passion is around process, and then how to match process with people. So I've done a lot of PMO work. As I mentioned, there's a company based in Minneapolis, St. Paul called Mgmt. I led the change there. A little fun fact about Mgmt, when I started there, they were just really starting to do Agile. And by the time I left last year, the CEO of the company, remember it's a private company, basically owner of a company, went to Boulder, Colorado, and got implementing safe training as well as a VP of delivery by Dean Leffingwell and Inbar Oren, and said afterwards, we are going full safe as our standard framework for our company. And I thought, my work is done. I've worked myself out of the job, moved on, and I'm doing this at other places now in government, which is a lot bigger than a 700-person company, is a lot larger budgets that go in the billions rather than the hundreds of millions. So, but I did learn a lot from that. And I've been a portfolio manager on and off in my career for over 10 years, and have taught many people, as you can see, 450 plus, including the LPM 4.6 class. I've got one coming up internally for the 501, excited about that. And I do have more nicknames than certifications. All right, let's get into the current role. So if you can, let me put this into the chat. Go to menti.com. And I'm going to put the actual number here and answer the question, what is your current role? It's open-ended. And I'll put this up here. All right, and present. So you go to menti.com. I'm putting this in the chat. All right, Agile Coach, I've never heard of that. Somebody's quick on the Jeopardy button. I'm saddened that Alex Trebek passed away at age 80, but man, what a great run he had. Safe fellow. I wonder who that might be. PMO consultant, great, one of my kind. Agilist, you're all my kind. We're all human beings, but I definitely get the PMO mentality. Lean manager, love it. Agilist, delivery lead. We don't have too many people, so All right. Agile Senior Program Manager and Agile Coach is taking the lead here. So we got about 8 results. Anyone else want to throw in their role? Give me an idea of what we got here. Yep. Okay, 10 results. So it's basically the type of crowd I would expect that would come at a Lean Agile meetup, right? So let's go into, well, how does LPM matter to you, right? Where does LPM come to play? And keep in mind, LPM is a very large subject. I mean, the original LPM class from SAFE was 3 days long. Now they've made it 2 days with an optional 1-day workshop, which if you ask me, if you don't do the workshop, then what are you doing with LPM, right? The workshop's very important to have as well, especially if you're trying to implement LPM with any sort of organization out there, whether it's an enterprise or agency in the government. And I'm just starting the journey to introduce LPM concepts to an agency right now in the government. And they're having a lot of excitement lately. Something happened with the presidency recently, so things are definitely shuffling around a bit. But we'll go over the general concepts of what is LPM, what is strategy, lean portfolio vision and canvas, value stream mapping, and my personal favorite, the portfolio Kanban. I can never get enough Kanban. And since I've got Kanbanistas and Kanban experts here, I think I'm in the right crowd. So let me start with a slide I grabbed from the recent SAFE Summit, and that is lean portfolio management is definitely growing. I remember back in 2013, I already heard about SAFE and I've known about it for a while, but I wasn't practicing it. I moved to Chicago and attended meetups there, and there was a company called Here, right, which is part of Nokia they did at the time, and they did maps, and they still do maps, you know, all of the feed in for what, you know, Google Maps and Waze and Apple Maps and so on. And they were doing SAFE at the time, and they said, you know, SAFE's really good, we like it, but that portfolio, it's just not working for us. Well, that was 7 years ago. It's matured a lot since that time. Looking at the material from what portfolio management, the portfolio level of SAFE has, which is now also a competency, right, to where it is today, it's advanced so much with 5.01. So it's grown, as it says here, 40%. It's extended to lean portfolio management practices. So a lot more businesses, I think COVID's helping move this, because with COVID, companies are learning and being forced to either evolve or perish, unfortunately. It's sad but true. And so they're having to pivot and change, and business agility. You need LPM, lean portfolio management, to do business agility. So businesses out there are beginning to accept this at a much more accelerated rate than in the past. Any questions from anyone? All right, moving on. So getting to the big picture, just in case nobody knew, you are in the top level here, right? I used to call them, you know, essential level, large solution level, portfolio level, and I would go level 1, 2, 3. But it's a portfolio level. So that's where we're going to be focusing our time this evening. And we're going to go even further down into that, where lean portfolio management, there's 3 what I like to call collaborations, because the players involved in the 3 main pyramids, as it's shown here, will differ for each part of it. It's not a set group of people. There isn't an LPM group specifically. LPM is a set of events and activities that will be participated by different key people and groups, depending on what it is. Now, a lot of that work there that we're going to focus on, and let me just click on it, has to do with the strategy, investment, funding. That will be our focus. I am not going to talk practically at all about the portfolio operations and how to keep that going with the value streams and the arts that are running with that, and getting to operational excellence there. Nor am I going to go over the governance to take the results of those arts and continue to budget and manage your portfolio and change as you go. All right, it's more of getting the strategy and investment set up and then reviewing that on a regular basis. Usually it's quarterly for strategy reviews and monthly for portfolio syncs. And then participatory budgeting is quarterly as well, but we're not going to go too heavily into those. All right, so strategy is about connecting the portfolio to enterprise. Jeffrey Moore, all right, great author, lots of books out there. He's got Crossing the Chasm, Inside the Tornado, and my favorite is Zone to Win. I really love that book. He said here, and you can read it yourself, right? Most strategy dialogues end up with executives talking about cross purposes because nobody knows exactly what is meant by vision and strategy, right? Strategy is a word that's thrown around to say anything big, right? And often even the people saying it don't really have a precise definition for it. And so there's a lack of alignment that starts even with the word strategy. And word choices are very important. So when you ask executive team members what is strategy, you'll get a diverse set of answers, and that's natural. Yet there's got to be a way to get them to come together so that way they can come up with where are we going as a corporation, as a portfolio, as an agency. So strategy is a buzzword, right? And there's a gentleman by the name of David Krasinski who's got a video out there. I'm not going to play the video. It's about an 8-minute video, but we're going to go through a little exercise of the concepts of the video to get an idea of it. Now, I'm going to definitely put this video on for everybody if I can get the link out here. I will definitely give the link to everybody on the video. For those of you who want to watch it, I do recommend watching the video separately, but we're going to move forward with these questions here. And basically, what David Kaczynski's done, and there's a lot of information behind this, is that there's 4 main questions asked about strategy. Now, where do you compete, right? What unique value do you bring? Let me just put up a company I've done work with, right? Domino's Pizza, right? Where do you compete? Well, clearly in the food business, food delivery service. What unique value do I bring? Well, they've got the store of the future. They've done a lot of things where they're even testing out right now autonomous vehicles for delivery of pizza, right? They're trying to be different than the Papa John's and the Pizza Huts and whatever local pizza places that you might think of. I like Luminati's, having lived in Chicago for quite a while. What resources and capabilities do we utilize, right? For pizza, it's like what's the ingredients of pizza? What are the store layouts? Where are the geographies of the stores? What's your leadership doing? Are you doing specialties on different kinds of other types of foods, with pastas and chicken wings, and they've got now cauliflower pizza, right? So what are they doing to what resources and capabilities do you have to build that out? And then how do they keep that going? Right? What steps are they doing to make it sustainable? Right? How they continue improving their stores and expanding their presence to continue growing the direction they like to be. So these are key questions asked about enterprise and your strategy. So let's go through. Now, I've heard Dean Leffenwell call this the enterprise strategy bug. Now, you'll notice that there's like about, I think it's 6 inputs, relatively speaking, which those inputs could be multiple parts, and then 2 outputs, right? So you get this enterprise strategy, and you figure out what your strategy is, and you're going to have a mission, you're going to have a vision, core values, you're going to have business drivers, you're going to have your competitive differentiators. What are your financial growths? How much you want to grow this year, next year, every quarter? What kind of competition you have, right? And then the portfolio context comes back to what you're already doing in operations, how you're measuring that, and feeding that back in to what you're going to do next with your strategy. And those outputs are going to be your budget for a portfolio, because I hear it's like a zero-sum game. For me, I like to consider like the money coming in and money coming out must be the same, right? Now you can borrow some, but in general, that's how it works within business, right? And then the strategic themes. And so let's go through an exercise on this. And this exercise, I'm going to go to Jamboard. I'm going to put the link out here. We're going to spend 5 minutes, just, and maybe a little bit longer, thinking about Any enterprise context that you can think of, one that you're in right now, or one that you know of, or one that you'd want to review. It's your choice. Everybody can do this for their own individual context. I'm not going to do breakout meetings or anything like that for this. We'll do it as a group. And answer these 4 questions. Each question is going to be a different slide. So we're going to start it with, where do you compete? What unique value do you bring? What resources and capabilities you utilize? And how do we sustain our value? So let me go to that. And here we go. Give you the link. And it will be in the chat. All right. Sorry for the delay on that. So the very first page, I see people are coming in, will be where do we compete? For any of you that haven't used Jamboard, it's a very simple Google product. All you need to do is go to this little toolbar to the left, click on that, get a sticky note. Now you can change the color if you want. You type in, pizza, that is my favorite food, and hit save, and then it'll pop it up and you can add more. So that is how simple it is. You can move it around, you can make it bigger and smaller. You can even spin it around so it's a spinning pizza. So we'll start with, where do we compete? I'll give a couple of minutes for that. And let me go ahead and put the Google timer. Google's got a lot of nice little tools out there that you can use. All right. Let's start. And I'll look at this while we're doing it. Mixed reality. I think I know what company that is. E-commerce. You compete in lean portfolio management. Lean Agile coaching and training. Lean Agile courseware. That sounds interesting. That sounds very interesting. I think we need more of that, but that might be the safe stuff. Financial services. Okay, very good. The truth is, we're just doing a first round with this, but the more specific you get on it, of course, the better it becomes, the more visual you can make it. Banking. Yeah, everybody's got to self-organize on sharing the space here. All right, let me just ask anybody want to talk about theirs. Any person.
I'll go, Mike. So I work for Scaled Agile, and so where do we compete? We develop courseware and training, and now a community platform for our customers who are looking to transform to Lean and Agile.
Fantastic, Richard. And might I add, I think you are doing very well at it. All right. Anyone else other than Richard?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So we're trying to compete in the mixed reality space. It's a rather small space, but still, very, very competitive field.
All right, great. And there we go. Timer went up. Okay, let's move on to the second one. What unique value do we bring? So think about what your space is, right? Where do you compete? Now, what unique value do you bring in that area you compete? So all I did is, by the way, for those that may have not noticed, is there's the top part here. There's multiple slides. You click on that. Or you can actually change the URL name and change the 0 to a 1 there. That's a little trick for your more tech heads out there. I like to play with URLs from time to time. So we'll give you a couple minutes to go through that. Let's just make it another 2 minutes. And there we go. What's unique about your portfolio, your strategy that you have with your portfolio? Massive personalization. Oh, sorry. See, got to share space. For banking services. I like that. There's a concept that Amazon, and actually I think eBay started it way before Amazon. No, no, actually I'm going to say that eBay followed Amazon. Amazon did it first. That's called push the user, where a lot of the things that are normally maintained by the company became a platform that they would have for Amazon Marketplace, for instance, where you as a small business or medium-sized business would be able to tweak anything you had with how your storefront had been, and then you could expand on it. And they call that push the user. Now, eBay had to follow suit because they started losing their market share to Amazon Marketplace. Now you got Shopify and a lot of other companies out there that push a lot of the heavy lifting to the user, right? It's really interesting where that's a unique value proposition. All right, well, these are some great ones. Look at these. Who wants to talk about this? Somebody who hasn't talked already.
Michael, I can go for it.
Pooja, yay! How you doing?
A long time. Good to see you. So the organization that I'm coaching is a commercial insurance space, and the value that they bring to their customer is by personalization. It's a commercial insurance, so it's a big loss prevention, and giving them some kind of a heavy, huge discount if they're retaining their insurance with the company. So they're very well known because of that, the customer retention, personalization, heavy give back as part of loss prevention. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you, Pooja. So again, it's got to be something that's different about your strategy in your business than any other business. It could be similar, but there's got to be something about it that's a draw that's different, right? So let's move on. We're going to go to resources and capabilities. Now, these are the tools, the people, the capital that you have. Maybe you've got big and angel investors involved. Maybe you have the support of some major company like Google or Amazon. Think of the FANG stocks, or Microsoft. You have them in there. Whatever it may be, right? Partners. That's a good example. Investors. Any particular tools that you have or anything that you're doing. That digital ecosystem. That's an interesting one. That's an interesting one. All right. I'm going to keep the timer in my head this time. I've got the 5:30 on this one. Common platform. Ooh, I like that. Platforms are very powerful these days. Meaning to me, I used to consider operating systems platforms. No, right? Platforms are the ability to have multiple people who have some commonality meet and interact with each other for a better good. I mean, like for instance, a platform that people might not think of in the gaming industry is like Steam, right? That is a tool that teenagers all know about and love. Fortnite being part of on Steam for any computers. And so that is a common platform they interact with. They've got their own currency. They've got their own products that they end up selling in there, all these add-ons, everything else. And the makers of Steam, Valve, are just getting rich off of it, right? They're doing great. Platforms are powerful. Drones, innovative service. Okay, who would like to talk about their resources and capabilities?
Look, time after time, I know it seems really simple, but I would say that something that I've found very important is feedback loops. Is the capability of people just coming together just to have a conversation. It's a, we get stuck in the weeds and development and project management and product management, but for some reason, every time we bring the teams together for some sort of whiteboarding session or to go over and communicate. Everybody just starts to be like, oh yeah, okay, and they start to exchange ideas, and they're like, okay, I don't know why we didn't realize this before, and it seems to accelerate, what we do when we just a simple conversation.
That to the power of 10. Fantastic. Thanks, Travis. All right, we'll go to the last one of these. So how do you sustain your value? So this is the fourth slide. Everyone, I believe, gets the drill now. I will put on the 2-minute timer for this. I'll give you 2 more minutes on this one. How do you sustain your value right now? What are you doing to make sure you can last long-term thinking? If you haven't noticed yet, I'm a kind of a big Amazon fan. Jeff Bezos is always talking about his annual letters to the company about long-term thinking, and between day 1 and day 2 company, and Amazon will eventually disappear over. I'm thinking it'll be 100 years from now, but it could happen sooner. Who knows? How do you sustain value? I think I've failed. We've got some honest people here. I need to think about this. I know that an older one that we were using was recurring revenue models, right? Subscriptions, and maintaining those subscriptions, and then figuring out ways to add more people to do subscriptions. How to get the stickiness to it, to whatever products. It depends on what you do. I mean, working in the government, some of the government agencies I worked with, they don't care too much about how many eyes they're getting on a page, or how much money this could actually generate, or anything like that. I'm not definitely going to bring up which agencies, but one agency has it where they have this fee they do a service for, but they have no way of tracking that fee. And basically the contractors and consultants are on an honor system, and many of them abuse it, and they've lost, let's just say it's easily in the 8-digit range, meaning in the tens of millions of revenue they're guessing they're losing each year because they don't enforce it. It's amazing how that sort of thing works. So I'm not giving you details about whom, where, or what other than that. Okay. Anybody want to talk about their way of sustaining value?
Yeah. Hi, Michael. This is Jorge.
Hi.
Well, yeah. Hi. Nice to meet you. In our case, in my company, I think something that it's a kind of differentiator about our service is that the coaches, we are always trying to get training about new technologies and about new ways of working, right? In terms of ability. So, for example, today I got a training about flight levels, which was something new for me, but it's quite useful, because it's a kind of combination between OKRs, value streams, TOC. So it's really nice. So I think that is something that we do.
Excellent. I love that's an excellent answer, in that I think a continuous learning culture is a way of sustaining value and then growing your value as well. That is one of the core competencies of SAFE. And I believe that ties in very well with your strategies. How can you make sure that you're always relevant and you're always changing as the industry changes because of whatever internal, external factors that happen? All right, great. Thank you, Jorge. I'm going to go back to the presentation, and we're going to get into some pretty fast movement here. So if anyone has a question, let me know. I have been noticing there is input going on in the chat. I'll try to keep up with it. But Sandra or Travis, if you see something and I'm not answering, you can just go ahead and speak up. I am perfectly fine with that. Okay, so you're all probably reading this already, for those of you that aren't familiar with this slide. And that is, this was taken from the latest SAFE training. It's 501. And so there is connecting the enterprise with strategic themes. Now, Jorge, you just mentioned OKRs. It's a good segue into it. And we do have a little bit of more slides about OKR, but I'm not going to go into OKR deep. I'm not going to anything too deep here. But this is about coming up with the strategic themes that are really meant to me kind of like for business. If you got an assigned airspace that you can fly in with the business, and you're never supposed to fly out of that airspace, coming up with strategic themes really is meant to put the parameters around any portfolio so that way your strategy and your portfolio match with those themes. And so it's got to be specific enough. A lot of traditional leaders will say, we want to increase shareholder wealth by 20% this year. We want to double our sales this year. Well, yeah, that's kind of great, but how does that motivate people? It's like a Dan Pink drive. It's like if you don't explain how a little more, get a little more specificity to it, it leaves people unmotivated. Of course, we all want to grow. Of course, we want to get wealthier. Of course, we want to get better. But what does that mean? So you got to be more specific. That's why the ones shown on the left, like autonomous delivery into retail, or for Domino's, saying that we're going to have it where our pizzas are going to use more natural ingredients, or we're going to have it where the cooking time for pizza we reduced by 10% because we've got better ovens that are more efficient, and maybe have a less energy footprint around that, right? We want to make it, the carbon neutral, as a lot of companies are going. So I don't know if Domino's is doing that, so don't quote me on that. But in any event, those are strategic themes that, like Domino's going with that idea, will continue, right? That's the idea. All right, so talking about OKRs, here's an example of the OKRs. Now they represent the strategic themes. And what I love about OKRs is that they give you the main objective, right? The overall high level objective. And then the key result is something measurable. It's quantitative. And it's extremely important. When you get to the heart of Agile, it's all about delivering in small pieces that are valuable, small vertical units of value, right? Slicing the cake, as it's called, and making sure the cake is baked with quality built in. Well, if you have exact percentages or numbers behind it, you can determine whether you're a little bit of the way, am I 10% of the way there, 20%, halfway, 90%? Am I going to get all the way there? There's a way to know if you're progressing or not. So it's really important to have key results along with the objectives so that way you can track it down. Now, OKRs is a complex topic. There's a lot of nuances to it. I'm not even going to go into the nuances, just the big picture. We even use OKRs at my company right now for our own internal performance reviews. All right, there's a lot of broken things, there's a lot of good things, but I think the OKR part of it's a good thing. Measuring ourselves by OKRs can be used in a lot of different ways. Definitely worthwhile for strategic themes. Any questions on this?
Just one question, Michael. Pooja here. Have you seen any non-agile, in way of delivery using OKRs? Just curious. Because my company is, my organization is planning to implement OKRs. I do know some of the pitfalls, but I'm curious if there are any, because it's got a mixed bag of both agile delivery way and project management in my organization. So just want to curious.
So I am pretty sure, not 100% sure, the agency I'm going in, OKRs is a TLA to them they've never heard of, a three-letter acronym, right? TLA. They have KPIs, but even that's not used as well as you would expect. I'm going to open that one up to the group though, because I can't think of one that's more traditional that is using OKRs right now. Does anyone have an answer for Pooja on that?
So I'll tell you, at Magic Leap, where we worked, kind of like the mixed reality tech company, we use different kinds of methodologies, waterfall, Scrum, Kanban, and whatnot. So they try to implement OKRs, and honestly, it wasn't easy. It's still a work in progress. Some teams did it really well. Some were still, trying to do it. So it's a very complex thing, and I think it's not something, if you've done some OKR courses or whatnot, you'll know that it's not like you'll implement it and roll it out and it's like done in 3 months, right? It takes several iterations. Like it almost takes like even a year and a half to actually do it correctly. I'm also getting ready to do OKRs where I work now, which is a smaller company. And I'm almost kind of like, I guess like what Michael said, some people OKRs, they're like, what is that, right? They're so used to KPIs. So it's going to be a bigger learning curve from there. So it takes time, but I think, the companies that have done it very successfully, I know Pendo.io, it's, I've listened to one of the talks by the CEO, and he says, if there's two things you can do in a company, they're a unicorn now, for those who haven't heard of Pendo. They're a unicorn, very successful. He says two things that you can do that will drive the success are OKRs and retrospectives. So anyways, hope that answers your question, but yeah, it's not easy, but you have to start.
Sure. So even if it's a mixed bag of organization with real agile mindset and traditional, it will kind of work, but it'll take time. Okay.
Exactly. If you let me, hello everyone, Mike and everyone here in this forum. My experience, I'm running right now, I'm accompanying a bank, a mid-sized bank in South America, in Ecuador, which is going through an agile transformation. So the interesting thing is that before my incorporation as an agile coach, they started using OKRs when they were a traditional bank still in the 2019. So they started by using it when there was no idea of agility at all. So right now we are going through this agile transformation. So we are now pointing out in order, to put these OKRs, making sense to this agile transformation, but they started before. So that's an interesting case.
Thank you so much, folks.
The other thing is that OKRs is a goal management system. It's not tied to any particular framework. So it can be used in traditional, it can be used in agile. It really doesn't have anything to do with it, but they're extremely powerful. They were developed by companies in Silicon Valley, most notably in Apple and Google, and they credit their high year-over-year growth to the use of OKRs. And one of the things I find is that it's easy to come up with the objectives. What's the difficult part is to come up with quantifiable key results.
The results,
and
yes.
Notice on the slide, we have from X to Y. And that's a very important aspect, is to understand where you are today and where you want to go tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
So much.
Focusing on outcomes and on valuable outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with Richard, and that's where we're struggling to come out with this, this key results and the percentage, especially in the finance area, and they're struggling with that. So absolutely true. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks everyone. And Pooja, I think you got some excellent feedback there that OKRs are, just go for it, right? They're relevant and valuable in of themselves. Okay, so strategic themes influence a lot of different parts of the portfolio, right? You have your enterprise or your agency, and then you come up with the strategy, right? The 4 different questions that we had that you asked yourselves to come up with those answers. Where do you compete? Unique, how you sustain in your resources, and then you take that and you feed that into the portfolio vision, the portfolio Kanban itself. We're going to talk about the vision of Kanban a little bit. And then the vision for each of the backlogs, we're not going to talk about that. The value stream budgets, we'll talk about it a little bit, and the guardrails, we're not really going to talk about that. But you can see this basically is the dog that wags the tail of everything else that you have for your portfolio. So it's really important that we get these established and iterate and modify, and you're always going to review those during your strategic portfolio reviews, and make sure that you're still have them relevant and they still are going the right direction. All right, so maintaining the portfolio vision. Not going to go, this is a great exercise to do, but we're not going to go into the exercise due to time constraints, of course. Again, this is more of a teaser, and it gets you more interested in safe LPM, so maybe you would have more of a reason to become more involved in learning about LPM, because there's a lot of great ideas in here. And one of the great ideas is, look, there's these value streams. We're going to talk about value streams in a moment, but there's a portfolio canvas. So we have a portfolio vision, which is where you're going to have, like, here's our vision of what our portfolio is as a current state, and the canvas helps capture all of the different major moving parts. As you can see on the screen, this is a modified version of the business model canvas. And it goes into what are our value streams, the solutions, who are our customers, what are the channels of distribution, what are our relationships, what kind of budget do we have, how are we measuring our results and our revenue, right? And so all these put together gives you a very great dialogue to have with leadership, your C-suite and your C-1 suite, those top leaders, your business owners, your top enterprise architects, and overall go through with your whether it's a lean agile center of excellence or coalition change, whatever you call it, and come up with, here's what our canvas looks like. And when you put that together, then that helps bring the direction of where your value streams are going. And then I'll show you here. It's also going to give you a time to do a little bit of design thinking. I like to consider this design thinking when we get to it. And that is, you have a canvas, but then you also do your traditional SWOT analysis. Now, SWOT analysis has been around for a long time. I remember doing this 20 plus years ago, where you go through, okay, what's the company's strengths? What's the company's weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? Well, that's been mixed up now as well to have what's called TOWS. And TOWS is just SWOTs in reverse, right? It's basically where you're mixing up and combining two things. Well, all right, what's our strengths and opportunities? And you ask the question, how can our strengths be used to maximize our opportunities? Or what's our strengths and threats? How can our strengths overcome our threats, right? If you're Facebook, you can do something that I often hear called zucking, where Mark Zuckerberg will copy a competitor like Snapchat with Instagram, and do the same thing with stories, right? They have that story feature, which was a problem for Facebook because they were beginning to lose some market share from that. And Mark Zuckerberg's been considers that we use our strength of having 3 billion users now. It's up to 3 billion on Facebook, and start dominating things where I even have it where you can buy stuff and sell stuff on Facebook, kind of like an eBay or an Amazon marketplace. So same thing with the weaknesses, right? You combine those, and this brings about a lot of divergent thinking. So that goes into the next slide, and that is, you come up with this portfolio canvas, and that's your current state. This is what we have today. And then you use that divergent thinking, which again is coming from the book of design thinking, of Agile product management, and diverging, like just let loose with those questions you ask with the SWOT and TOWS analysis. And it gives you all these what if scenarios. Here's where our company, if you're in the pizza business, what if we do start doing drone pizza delivery, right? What's that going to look like a year from now? What do we expect to get from that? Or the autonomous vehicle delivery for pizza, which is probably more realistic, let's face it, right? So those things are then brought out in different canvases. Now, you only got limited time to do it, so you don't want to you want to time box it. But then you go through those, and once you've got a good enough list, you say, okay, we've got our best ideas here. Then you use convergent thinking to kind of vote on which ones make less sense than others, which ones the combinations we'd like to come up with the future state. And that becomes the input with the value streams and everything else in there to what your backlogs are going to be, what your epics are. And that's going to go into the portfolio Kanban that they get potentially reviewed, analyzed, put in the backlog if they're approved, and then implemented and worked on until they're done. Any questions on this? Okay, so we're going to move into value streams mapping. So one last question in the Jamboard. I just want to make sure everyone's got a level set because it's interesting. What is a value stream? We spend just a couple of minutes, go back to the same board. All right, we just move it forward one. I'll put the link on there for anybody that might have dropped off. All right, here's the link. What does a value stream mean to you? What is a value stream? Is it something out in nature that has money flowing down it? Right? It's like money doesn't grow on trees. Maybe money doesn't flow down streams. What does it mean to you? Take a moment to think about it. The flow of value. That sounds like a very Kanban-y way of saying it.
That's me.
I had a feeling it was you.
Mind that.
All the actions that add value to the customer. Okay. Group of things that all working together delivers value. One of my favorite quotes on value comes from Simon Sinek. Hopefully many of you know who he is, Agile coaches. If you don't, I'd be surprised. He says value is a feeling, right? You can't measure feelings very well, and so you can't measure value very well too, right? There are ways you can use proxies to measure value based on what your business does, right? You can measure value with the Pirate metrics, or with Google Heart metrics, or with NPS, Net Performance Score, or employee NPS. There are ways to measure satisfaction, delight, those feelings that people get from whatever you do as a business or agency. And that's as close of a proxy as value comes. So, yeah, steps to provide a service, okay. So just even looking at this, I'd say we have a little bit different opinions on value, right? I only see one that really brought into the fact the customer, right? Value can happen not just the customer, but it can happen throughout the organization. But in general, I like to consider it's driving with that customer centricity in mind. That with value, you're driving that. Now let's go into some of what Scaled Agile has to say on that. Let me go back to that. There we go. All right, so organizing around value. Traditional portfolio management, like what I did at BP over 10 years ago now, is that you know, BP had this thing where we would go through our own prioritization process. It was homegrown, and we'd use NPV and IRR for rate of return and payback. And IT, I was part of their digital communications technology, which was IT. And they were driving most of the direction for all the projects. And they said what value was. Value is what we believe. Business, you just confirmed that. You know, North America Gas or deep water production, what do you think of this for it? Oh, you want a GPS system to help you figure out where the reservoirs are and how we can use that to get more oil or gas, fracking, and so on out of the ground. They did that very siloed, where IT was kind of like pushing it, and then business would come back and say, yeah, that looks good or not, right? So it was all in a silo. The value was really delivered for most part there by IT, and business didn't like it. So they ended up coming up with their own projects they did with their own people they hired that were IT type people, and they started doing their own competing products. That was a mess, right? That's traditional project portfolio management that I've seen in the past. And that was because silos ended up having people have a zero-sum game. They were fighting against each other. If you have a network, a group that is back to where everyone's organized around value, then you can avoid those conflicts that BP was having. Now BP, that's BP of 10 years ago plus, right? BP's become a very big safe supporter. They've done a lot of, and I'm not on the inside of it, but I know from the outside, talking to BP people just a couple years ago, less than a year ago actually, they've changed their whole way of doing portfolio management. So it's pretty cool. All right, so moving on. For those of you that aren't familiar with value streams, it's kind of like there's the DevOps of value streams. There's the development value streams, which is what will come in the future, what's planned for the future being developed now. And there's the operational value streams. What do you have now? What is there now that provides value to the customer? And it's all about getting to the big places that it shows here, from a concept, an idea, from idea, I want to deposit my check through my mobile app, to cash, check deposited money in banking account, right? And they give an example here for loan applications. Same idea. And then the whole thing is, where are the biggest pain points? Where does the enterprise or agency wish to change things? What matches with our strategic themes? What fits our vision? And what fits with our overall roadmap? And those become the improvement areas that are already supported by teams, and then development value streams continue to improve on those, right? So you got to understand the operational value stream, but then the development value stream is where your change is happening. That's where you want to focus on once you've gotten the layout of what you currently have in place, which a lot of businesses and agencies out there, they really don't know from the systems thinking big picture perspective, and that causes problems. All right. So that gets down to, and I'm working in government now, so projects still rule the day, RFP, RFIs, all of the requests for a proposal, requests for information. Big projects still rule in a lot of places, although they're changing. They are changing. It's happening. And I'm glad to see that. And they're getting more and more open. And definitely the consulting agencies like CGI are helping them along the way. So funding value streams is all about getting out of the whole blame game, if you wish, we call it, and bring the people to the work. So you're not always doing the contractor consultant dance where you bring a team together. They do the Tuckman model of you form, you norm, you perform. Well, form, storm, norm, and perform. And in that process, you get really good as a team. And then project ends. Team blows up. They're gone. They end up going together, maybe same people, maybe not, into another project. Then you got to do it all over again. And there's all that time that goes in contract negotiation, contract work, and all that takes time, and it's delays. And delays are really slowing down the delivery of value. So if you end up funding value streams, which are always happening, always perpetual. As long as you got a business to run, as long as you have an agency, if you maintain these value streams, there's always the next work to do. There's the next feature to work on, the next story to work on, right? The next epic that needs to be worked on. Then you will avoid all that overhead. Now that's contrary to a lot of traditional project management. It can be fighting words for a lot of people. So I understand it can be difficult. But this is one of the core things about funding value streams, so that way you can get better results that accelerate your delivery. Questions?
Mike, do you use for that value stream mapping, obviously this tool, value stream map as the tool for finding out those value streams?
Well, I don't have a specific value stream mapping tool that I can recommend. I mean, I will just use, if I'm in person, just stickies on the wall. I'm looking forward to the Pfizer vaccine that's going to be coming out to maybe help bring back to a lot more face-to-face interaction. But tools like Miro and so on, just being able to build a visual whiteboard and build out your value stream that way, that's basically what you can do. Now there might be some more tools out there. I've not gotten experience with those that allow you to do it. It's about being able to move things around, add things, be really able to be very dynamic about it for any tool that you would use on mapping value streams that are out there.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
One question. What is the best way to define these value streams for a company? You have to be based on the products or the services that the company is offering to the market or something like that?
SAFE has a value stream workshop toolkit that is really awesome with explaining how value streams are and work, and then going through the process of defining a value stream. And it usually takes a day. It can take longer depending on people. And it's all about bringing the right people in the room. That is the number one most important thing, is you bring the right people in the room and they're willing to do it. That's the second part. But hopefully, if they're in the room, they're willing to do it. But of course, some are more willing than others. That's just human nature. And getting them to co-create. For me, with the current agency I'm working with, we're beginning to set this up. I'm just going to be the facilitator, right? I don't know crap really about how their agency runs. And so I'm going to have a lot of false beliefs, and I'm going to try to keep my own anchoring and my own bias out of anything I talk with them. But I'm going to help them understand how the process works and have them build it up and let them know if it doesn't seem like what they're saying fits within what a value stream item would be, and guide them that way. So it's more about finding and validating the right people and then co-creating with them the value stream.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hey, Michael. I have a question. It's the biggest constraint or the hurdle that I have seen is the thought process of converting the budgeting from the traditional budgeting into the value stream budgeting. I would definitely like to hear some of your experience moving organizations from traditional budgeting to value stream budgeting and what sort of things that you have encountered, because I haven't been successful trying to do that yet.
Yeah, and I've had limited success as well. The last main company I worked at, Mgmt, let's just say the CFO and I never saw things eye to eye. But now they're a consulting company. I was the PMO for a consulting company. They do their budgets their own ways, and they didn't see any reason to have value streams. Because basically they just did what their clients told them to do, right? And they may provide some leadership direction. Hey, we're doing safe implementation here at this client, that client, so on. But basically, getting the funding for value streams, my view is to get talking in the same language as the contract officers or the chief financial officer or those ones that really understand how projects are done, and get to talk in a way that has them understand the value of this. It can be very hard to do. And if anybody else in this meeting has any great success stories here, I'd love to hear them, because I'm still working on my first one on this.
Yeah,
I
can
join
share.
you, Michael. I can join you as well.
I can share some tips. Actually, it's really not that, well, in reality, it shouldn't be that hard to get people to go from project funding to value stream funding. It's more of the mindset than anything else. Because when you think about it, if you speak to the CFO and you explain to them, you know what, we can have very stable understanding of what our costs are. And because basically an Agile release train has a certain number of people on it, and we work in program increments. And when you know that information, you know what your costs are for each program increment. You're not going to have any cost overruns like projects, because basically you're working in time boxes. So now we have a system which we have a very predictable cost, and we're going to be measuring our value in a different way. And once you explain that to CFOs, if you can get that light bulb to go off, they will find a way to do this. And the other thing that can get in the way sometimes is that many of our systems, I'm talking about both our computer systems and our manual systems, were developed for project cost accounting. And but once you have them bought into why we fund value streams and how it's going to be so much more predictable for them, then you can get them over that hurdle and begin to implement value streams. So, and I've actually implemented value streams in the federal government. Yes, it can be done.
That's an awesome experience, Richard. What I have seen is that they want to look at previous year's budget and figure out what the increment is. And there is a group of people in the operations side and finance side who doesn't want to even talk about value.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, lean portfolio management is still a new practice. And I think that more and more companies are getting it. It's going to just take time. I mean, I remember when I started developing the IP for this, people had no idea what a portfolio was. And in fact, I still think that most people don't really understand why we manage in portfolios and what actually a portfolio is, yet alone the sense of value. So it's been a very cost-driven thing, especially in IT and IT finance. They think more about cost and value, because it's hard to come up. What is the value? That could be a whole other talk that Michael can do on value.
Awesome feedback, and maybe I should. Thanks, Richard. Okay, time's a ticking, and I'm going to move on. I think we've talked enough. Richard brought good input here. just really quick, some other inputs I've always heard is, right, there's the predictability, Richard. I think you hit it right on the head there. If you, there's a survey out there that took hundreds of C-suite people. These were like CTO and CIOs specifically, right? And they said, one question, there are a lot of questions that are asked, right? One question was, if you had a choice, would you wish for more productivity or more predictability, right? More productivity or predictability. Well, over 90% of those that responded said they want predictability. And the reason why is because they make commitments to their stakeholders, shareholders, to their board, to a lot of people, right? They're making promises. This software is going to be out then with these features. We're going to have it ready by this conference, whatever, you know, by Black Friday, we're going to have these things released. Baby Yoda is going to be out in the droves. Anybody can have a Baby Yoda. That commitment, they want to make sure that they keep to their word. That's more important than we can crank out more stuff, but you don't know when you're going to get it exactly. So I don't know about the other 1 out of 10 that said no, they must be driven by something else. But in general, that's what value streams also give you, is a lot more predictability once you get everything in order. It doesn't happen overnight. So these things bring that into play. Resource reassignments happen less. Blame games don't happen because there's no such thing as a project overrun. And the delays that happen with project cost analysis and all that go out of the picture as well as you stop doing projects and instead fund value streams. Okay, we're down to the last one. I'm seeing that time's getting a little tight, but this is the last section. And my favorite, by the way. I've been Kanbaning it for over 10 years, been a fan of David Anderson when he started bringing that into the IT world, and you know, read his book and read many books. And I know we've got some Kanban experts that probably can whip around me 10 times more than I could. But the first thing I want to say is that one problem that is the most common, and the first one you want to fix, if you have a choice about it within a portfolio for anything that's done by an organization out there, is the unlimited work intake. Always trying to push for more. And what does that do? Everyone's overloaded, tyranny urgent, get burnt out, and they actually produce less. So that's why the old saying, less is more. I've done some work in, I'll not say the name of them. Let's just say they're a big consulting organization downtown Chicago, and I was working with their tax department. And there was a gentleman there that said, you know, we've got hundreds of people in this group, and we're working with partners, and they keep requesting new additions, new changes, new software, etc. And we're like McDonald's. We're a fast food service. We just say, you want that? Okay, we can get that for you as fast as you want. And do you want fries with that? And the result of it, of course, was that meter, as it shows in the left, went to red, and nothing ever got done except for the ones that whatever partner would scream the loudest saying, you promised me this 6 months ago. I still don't have it. I am going up to the CEO of the company if I need to. And then everything else gets pushed back and the other ones get upset. Nobody's happy. Nobody's feeling good about it. It's a losing game, right? If you put Kanban systems in and visualize the work, the first thing you're going to do, if you do it right, is start removing the lowest priority items in there. And then that's going to help drive more productivity and predictability as a result of taking the stuff out there that's already overloading. So let's just go over what it looks like from a portfolio level in SAFe. Now, these can change. I actually got a slide about that, but in any event, I'm not going to go these too much detail, but you can look at them. You start with a funnel where anything can be brought in from anywhere. Keep that in mind. It could be coming from anywhere. It could be from a team that has this great idea that's really huge, and they think it's going to be successful because of some reason they believe. That can get in there, right? So anything can come into the funnel. And then once you get into reviewing, that's when things start going out of the funnel. It doesn't fit within our strategic theme, right? It's an idea that's too small. Kick it down to a feature, right? Whatever it may be, the reviewing starts where you come up with an epic hypothesis statement. What is it that we believe is going to be valuable? Because nothing we know for certain is necessarily something we really know is for certain. In other words, I used to go to a lot of Dev Jam conferences with David Hussman in Minneapolis, St. Paul, because I worked there. He's unfortunately no longer with us, but he would start product conferences with, recognize you are wrong. Okay, now that you realize you're wrong, what can you do about it? And that's when you go into the Eric Ries way of lean startup, which is this idea, you got a hypothesis, you want to prove that the hypothesis is true, and how well did you prove it? So reviewing gets into starting to come up with that. And if it passes through that with an owner, there's some key business owner that's going to be, this is their baby, right? It might be more than one person, but usually is one person as the primary. And then you go into analyzing, and that's when you start getting into the prioritization, the costs, getting more in depth, because you're talking about usually $1 million or more. It depends on the size of the organization, so on. But these epics that go through here are big, right? They could be a lot of money involved in it. And if they get through analyzing, which goes through a very important meeting that happens, the strategic portfolio review, then it'll get put in the backlog. Doesn't mean it gets started immediately, right? It's in the backlog. And then again, the prioritization will determined by the trains when it gets picked up and how much, right? And then that will move into, then you implement until you hit an MVP that validates the hypothesis. And then you can persevere to it. And it can go down to the train level where they do it on their own. Things can get so small that it's up to the trains and those in the solution and agile release trains decide whether they want to continue doing it, or it's done enough where we can say it's no longer needed. And that can be a little slippery of a slope as well. But I think you get the idea here, right? That you're flowing through this, there's WIP levels and so on. And with all the Kanban experts here, anybody have any questions on this? It's a lot, isn't it?
The concept is great. Tell me a magic trick where I can get my stakeholders and upper management bought into this.
Well, other than really being Gandalf and doing your staff and waving it and changing things, it takes a lot of time and influence. That's a conversation in itself, right? People are the hardest part of change. It's always going to be true. So that's your specific situation. Yeah. And
pretty much like, you know, the challenge that I've been having is they're just not doing any kind of business value at all. I mean, it's just the stakeholders get together, different portfolio like finance or underwriting or different portfolios for that matter. And then they say, hey, so that's been kind of overall the challenge that I've seen multiple companies in getting to have the product owners or the stakeholders from the product side to have that business value put across and do that prioritization and that level of thinking.
I can share with you a quick trick that you can do.
Yeah, sure.
At one company, what I did was we spoke to the executive's executive assistant, and we said, what room do executives typically meet in? Okay, it's in this particular conference room. Okay, would you mind if we hung this board up as well as some of the principles and our strategic themes up here? And she said, absolutely. So we put up the Kanban board, we put up all the initiatives that we were aware of, we had the strategic themes of what we thought it was, and we didn't say a word. We didn't say a word to them. It was just in the room. And all of a sudden, we were getting calls about, okay, what does this stuff mean? This looks very interesting. And all of a sudden they were pulling, wanting to learn about that. And so that was one way. And then another thing I did was this company, just like every other one, has a lot more initiatives than they can possibly do. And we put all the initiatives up on a wall. There were 125 initiatives. And they didn't even know that they had that many. And we said to them, which one of these initiatives can be pulled off because it really won't move the needle in an organization? That went down from 125 to about 20 initiatives. And I said, would you like to have visibility like this all the time? And we said, okay, we have something called a portfolio Kanban board. So this way, your queue of these large initiatives doesn't build up and surprise you, because guess what? On all these things here, people are doing some amount of work on it, but you don't have really any focus if you have 125 initiatives. So just my little trick. Try it. Let me know how it works.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
Nice. I love it. All right. I'm going to skip this slide because I think I talked through most of it. And so we're going to move on just a little more detail about how that works. And then there is exit criteria related to Kanban. It's, as Richard, I see you mentioned in the chat, Kanban boards are always customizable for your own context, your own business. I'm going to show one in the next slide. I think Brian Tucker's a gentleman who spoke about the one he was doing with his client context for the SAFE Summit. But exit criteria, just like definition and done in a lot of ways, is extremely important to get very crystal clear for the needs of the organization, that you have clear exit criteria for when you move from a reviewing to an analyzing stage, or you're going from the backlog into MVP, or MVP is ready to say done, right? So clear expectations. This is a collaboration. There is stakeholders have to be involved in saying how that epic moves. Now, epics move through a portfolio Kanban board, right? That's the main unit that's being moved through. And so having that and capturing what those are, make sure everybody's clear, all your criteria has been met, allows the flow to go at the right pace. So what it takes before you can move, like, you know, from analyze the portfolio backlog, there's an actual official function where there's a go decision made through those involved in the LPM, right? That strategic meeting was go, this epic is high enough priority compared to the others. It's got its business case put together, the hypothesis is put together, we agree with it, we've got the owner in place, everything's set up with the guardrails. We've got we've got the capacity to handle it, ready to put it in the next one and put it in the backlog, right? And then this slide just shows some examples of what would be exit criteria. Again, this is customizable, flexible to whatever you have. This is a good starting point. And really, that's what SAFE has for a lot of their artifacts and a lot of the framework itself. These are starting points that you start with, and then you change them whatever's needed. They're a great starting point. These are like the better practices, I'll call them. Not necessarily the best practices, but better practices than what likely is being done at your organization and agency right now. So you can see the examples here. I'll make sure that for any need to get this, just let me know about it and can have the presentation available. Yeah, I'm not going to go through these details unless anyone has any specific questions about this.
I have a question, but do you know if there is a book in the market about real business experience implementing lean portfolio management?
Is there one?
I'm working on it. No, it doesn't exist out there, but you can check out my book, Safe Distilled, and it has a lot more content on lean portfolio management.
Thank you, Richard.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
You're writing a book, I'm writing a book, but mine is not about this. All right, fantastic. Keep going, man. More power to you. All right. And then this is the one from Brian Tucker I was just mentioning. He presented this during the 2020 SAFE Summit, which just happened a couple weeks ago. And I guess about 3 weeks now. And make it your own. As you can tell, in he's got the funnel review analyze, but the analyze, he has a breakout with an progress lane and a done lane and a parking lot too for something that may be before it's time. Like I mentioned, the drone delivery service for pizzas. Maybe that's not ready for now because drones are not reliable enough to do that. You put it in a parking lot and every so often you look at it again, is this ready for now? As the industry, as drones evolved, so we can consider doing it now? Yes, no, and then it could be brought back into analyzing. There's also a trash feature, so that way you can say, no, that funneled item doesn't fit with our strategy. And these are examples of actual epics that have their hypothesis value, and they're showing their value going to what we thought the hypothesis value would be, which is this line, and where it's been going each PI. So like about every quarter, right? Each program increment. And so it gives you an idea of how they're stretching out. And it also gives you an idea whether you want to persevere on it, which is a new lane they have here, or whether you want to say it's done, We want to do something else that gives us more value. So these are good indicators to tell, and that's part of the operations and governance side of it. And then getting the done is like, okay, we're going to continue tracking it, or we're happy with the outcomes. Let's go ahead and say it's done. But you can also say, let's undo it if we find a reason that we want to get more value out of it. This is a good real world example of building a Kanban portfolio board for a real business. Pretty cool, huh? All right, so next steps, final part. There is an LPM adoption roadmap. I'm not going to go into the details of this. You can tell there's a lot of pieces to it, right? There's a line, you then organize, strategize, execute, govern, measure, and grow. It's gone a long way back in the day when I did project portfolio management, and Steve Fortune of BP, who's still with them, would always say align, leverage, and integrate. Ali, he would say align, leverage, and integrate. Well, that's back in the traditional portfolio management. I'm sure he uses different terms. It's over 10, that was actually 15 years ago. And things have evolved. So there's an adoption roadmap, again, standard ways to go. And there is the LPM course, 2-day course of 1-day workshop. And definitely there's a lot of great trainers out there. Richard probably could name a lot that would do it. I know that I'm not going to say specific ones, but there's ones that I've worked with before that are really good at doing this. So take a look at it on the training side of this SAFE website. And as well as there is a toolkit. Any of you are an SPC, you can access the toolkit. Great toolkit to get a real good introduction for any sort of company, business, etc. And of course, there's plenty of posters you can put on walls to see how people respond to as well. And then lastly, there is a self-assessment that you can go to that helps you determine the health of your own lean portfolio management and that competency. It's available here. I can make sure that everyone gets access to this so they can try out the assessment themselves and bring it to your own business leaders for them to determine whether they are advancing the needle very well or not, and keep track of that on a quarterly basis or whenever they need to do it. So with that, I'm done. Questions?
Michael, I just wanted to say that you did an awesome job with this presentation.
Thank you.
And I like the way that, the different things that you picked from the presentation. And I can tell that you really have been studying and learning a lot in this area. So wow. I guess if you're looking for a good trainer, Michael would be a very good person, just based upon what I've heard.
Yeah, this has been great, Michael. I'll tell you what, sometimes as coaches and trainers, we get so focused in on just the execution, but there's so much more that a company needs to be thinking about at the higher level, right? Like at that strategic level, at that portfolio level, where we need to really understand value, and sometimes need to get our heads out of the weeds and then start to look at this high level stuff. To start thinking about value and long-term value, and not just like the short-term, hey, we got to get this done, right? Because that is so easy to get stuck into that we forget that why we're there. And so this is great and a great reminder of how and why we need to do that.
You spurred a thought, Travis, that comes back to me from time to time. As Agile coaches, as going back into the actual roles we have here, PMOs, lean Agile experts, and so on. The hardest part of this is just getting connected with the right leaders so that you can have that conversation with them openly about it. And I've always had a hard time getting to, and I'll do the Thanksgiving analogy here because Thanksgiving's coming up here. Get into the big kids table, right? You got the little kids table you sit at for a lot of Thanksgiving dinners, and you got the adults table. Getting yourself into that adult table and having a voice there to speak sometimes is the majority of the battle, right? That they just don't even want to hear about all this newfangled stuff. Now, I think that tables are beginning to have seats opened up more because of what's been going on in 2020, for better or worse, and so that's helped. but it's still a matter of how can you take this and bring it to the table. Like Richard said, he had a great idea with the administrative assistant to put posters on the wall. Those kind of ideas, just so you can start the conversation without forcing it on those people that really make a difference in your organization.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. And those are, you know, sometimes those are tough ears to get a hold of.
Yeah, tell me about it.
They're like, everybody wants to know, you know, what's in it for me. But Michael, I really appreciate you coming out here and talking to us. This is a great presentation and definitely expanded my knowledge of SAFe and scaled Agile. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Travis, Sandra, for setting me up in a good way and inviting me to do this, and everyone else for joining. I really appreciate the feedback, and Richard dropped off, but man, it was great to have him on board to answer the really tough questions. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of the Veterans Day and Thanksgiving, and you know, holidays are coming around the corner, so keep safe.
All right, I'll see you.
Good to see you, Michael. Thank you
Thanks,
so
Michael.
much, Travis.
Thanks, everybody.
Sandra.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.